Okay, so um, I usually can't see the comments that are on here. Um, Today, I'm just going to share just a little bit about just my humble observation about the complacency with scamming and underage sex within our community. Um, so, yeah, there's a lot of complacency. And by complacent, I mean that there is an ignoring of red flags, and I don't even know if we can call it a red flag, of when a young person or someone speaks out about um, actual misuse or abuse. But there's a complacency, and I don't want to be cryptic. I want to be very, very clear so that this sharing is helpful. So basically, people are not speaking out, and for several different reasons when it comes to con artists and scamming within our community, and when it comes to underage sex. Now, as I've shared before, in different countries and on different continents, the legal age for consensual sex is younger than it is in the United States. Sometimes we're so busy being entertained that sometimes we don't do some basic checking. You know, all the stuff we look at on Google, we don't look at some of these basic facts. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm speaking particularly, even though this is not exclusive to us, but I'm speaking as a black woman. And in Africa and different parts, because that is an entire continent, in different parts of Africa, the age for consensual sex is younger. Greetings, greetings, Wanda. In Central America, the age for consensual sex is younger. In the United States, it's 18. If you want to, last I checked, it was 18 years old. If you want to engage in sex, smoke, drink, all the things that young people are dying to do that they think the adults are doing, that's usually between 18 and 21. You go to different parts of the world, some parts of Central and South America, the ages can go between 14 and 16. Now, if we use the wisdom of life experience, common sense should tell us if we put, again, our emotions and our chosen religious beliefs or follow, whatever you choose to follow, if we put it to the side, and I'm going to tell you as a woman, my body was not fully developed at 14, even though I received my menstrual cycle. There are girls now that receive their menstrual cycle at 9, 10, 11, 12. Those are children. Their minds aren't fully developed. Their womb isn't fully developed. Their hips are not fully developed. But more importantly, their mind is not fully developed. So we have many of our folks coming from the States, and in an effort to reclaim our culture and the aspects of the African culture when we came over or were brought over in many instances to try to rectify some of the damage of slavery. We want to reach back over and jump right back over to the continent. But it's a huge continent, and culturally, we're not the same anymore. And we can get so confused with all the rhetoric that sometimes we get so blurred in common sense. Common sense is you don't have sex with children. And in the time of free for all right now, and wanting to be politically correct or being attacked when you say you don't agree with other people's behaviors, you know, oh, you can do whatever you want, you're an adult. But sometimes, not even sometimes, it's becoming more prevalent that we are turning a blind eye to the misuse of women and children, and that's going to bleed over to the male children and the female children. And just simply put, if we ask ourselves honestly, why are we not speaking out as women? For example, with R. Kelly, women, black women should have been in a. It was up to us. It was our responsibility. I can't tell grown folks what to do, but we had the opportunity. Those type of laws attract perversion. We had the opportunity to be in an uproar about this man who was accused of peeing on a young girl. and his music was not overall boycotted, banned from our houses. I wonder if he went to a big church, did his minister speak out? He was not giving a consequence. There was no corrective action other than money. So this is the time that we're in. So, his are there was his house of worship responsible? Was his wife partially responsible at that time? I don't know if she was with him. It's not a condemnation, because I'm not here to condemn anyone, because, quite frankly, people do a good enough job of condemning their own selves with their own behavior. It's not necessary really to condemn people. However, I will say judgment in the sense of assessment. I question anyone, and I don't trust anyone that would ask me to suspend my judgment. We're in a time now where people that are good at controlling the context of words will have you confused and afraid to call out what it is that you see, or have you second guess your first hand experience. As I've shared before, this me sharing in this channel has been me taking a risk to say something, so that the next young adult, the next young person, or the person that's looking to come to the tropics or to a warmer climate, at least they are informed, and they are able, while they may not have the life experience as a frame of reference of a cult, at least they can peep some of the patterns before they are in a situation, and have some ways to prepare themselves before they get in a situation and they're isolated, or have been violated, and a lot of damage is done. But we are quite frankly overlooking things. So, quite simply, what I've observed is that for women, it's part of us wanting to not upset the men that we're with, to not upset the men in our family who may be participating in this stuff, in these behaviors, or we want the attention. We want the attention from these men, so we want to be picked. The constant fear mongering of, oh, all the men are in jail. You know, everybody's, there's such a large population of the men that are DL or whatever, that was so desperate and traumatized by the thought of not being in a relationship, that we are overlooking, ignoring, and more importantly, I don't know if the ignoring is intentionally, but a lot of stuff has come to the surface right now. We can say ignoring. We're not holding, and this goes for females to a lesser degree too, because just based on the numbers, we're not holding folks accountable. We are not setting standards for what we are exposing our children to. And I've noticed this firsthand, cultural or not. We don't have to put a culture. I don't even say they call it conscious community. When I was coming, there was no conscious community, you know. But we're not in the church. The regular black folks. There's no accountability, and folks don't want to make themselves vulnerable. They don't want to make themselves seen, and there's no corrective action. Am I saying go out and hang people? No, but there has to be some corrective action. We're not even willing to have the conversation. I don't see there was some. I would say it appears to be a weak attempt at a conversation within the conscious community to address one of the men folk. I don't know if it was African Mbata, but to address some folks around mishandling and sexual abusing, um, young people. And 14 and 15 is not a small child, but that's not an adult in their 20s or their 40s. So why people so confused, and why, to be quite honest, why men can't take a stand on this, is there are many different reasons, but it's disgusting. It's nothing protective about it, and we're just as equally responsible. So rather than just point the finger of blame, I'm just offering some insight, because I'm a woman and I'm a mother, and it has been demonstrated that it is not a priority to protect black women and children for many different reasons. When we go around the world, we don't want to be accountable, but from all the different countries that I've traveled to, usually, and I was traveling since the 90s when I worked in the airline industry, usually when I would come across black folks, it was if they were studying abroad, if they were in the military, or if they were in entertainment. So I was amazed back then that people would be like, oh, your hair, or, people would be amazed. Particularly in Asian countries, also when I traveled, some other places. But people do form an opinion of us based on what they see in our music. This is another area where we haven't wanted to hold accountable the entertainment and the art that's coming out of our community, and the programs and the culture that is promoting this misogyny, being drunk, being high. We're responsible for that. We don't have to spend our money on it. We don't speak out against it, and we don't take a stand. We don't take a position as parents that give our young people money, or that monitor what our young people are spending on. But I don't want to get too far away from the adults. And it's very clear that there's a conflict in observing a pattern. There's a conflict of interest. There's a reason. And one thing I know, that being a parent of small children, nobody does something without a reason. And there is a reason why we're not speaking out, women and men. And there's a conflict of interest. The perceived benefit of the attention. There are no conflict because pedophilia is popularly accepted by the elite. Well, we could talk about the elite, but when I was growing up back in the day, I wasn't surrounded by elites. There are different classes and demographics, but across the whole, yes, it's accepted by the elite. But I mean, do we keep putting everything in our community off on the elite? Or are we saying one minute we're kings and queens, right? And the next minute we can't think enough for ourselves? I get programming, but we do have enough wherewithal and common sense to make sense of, in our regular neighborhoods. It's not the elites that are setting the standards. I'm not looking at Hollywood moguls as a justification for the pedophilia that goes on in our neighborhood. And so we're not taking responsibility. Everyone else is responsible but us. And so, without getting into a long, drawn out discourse, there's something that all of us can do rather than constantly, habitually talking about the situation without doing something. It's up to all of us to speak up and to set a standard. And if you're going to date, I don't like the word date, but if you're going to be in relationship with another grown adult, and you know of pedophilia going on, or if you know of underage sex, right? Because this I have observed with, let's say, for example, folks coming over from the States, or men folk in particular, going to Africa when they haven't been responsible in their own relationships, or those things don't work out, and so they go somewhere else. And this is, different kinds of men in the States. They go to Asia, or they go to Africa, or they go to Honduras, or one of these countries where people are going to be impressed by the money that they have, because the economy is different and it's cheap. There's not a certain standard that you're held to. So men that are looking to deal with girls that are 14, 15, 17, 18, they don't have the wisdom or the frame of reference to hold these men accountable. And so they'll say that more mature women are trying to hate or something like that. And it's like, it's really wisdom is hard earned from life experience. Because what you don't see in a lot of these videos, there are plenty of women here in Central America and South America where the men, have sex with them and leave them. 14, 15, and they don't have services available to them. There's also a lot of religion over here, so they'll be encouraged to have the baby. And there's nothing wrong with children and stuff if we're planning and we're being responsible. But they don't even have the maturity. Some people, just the same as in the States, treat the children like they're doll babies, or, as something to do. There's no kind of planning or something bigger than the attention, the gratification of sex. And I have this cute little doll that's a child until they start telling you no. So, I'm just having this conversation to stimulate folks to think of, why are we not holding holding the men and women in our lives accountable to speak up? I really have to question when so many people want to talk about elders and our community and coming together and we got to build. I'll be real with you. I don't have it for the rhetoric. I'm not impressed. I'm a mature working adult. I'm not impressed by throwing money or trinkets my way. You'd have to tell that to somebody that's 14 or 15 that's unaware. And I'm a person that has put my money where my mouth is. I haven't, it's not necessary for me to wait for the government or anything to do something. But it's not a secret. This is known old information that money is put forth, and attention. Those are the reasons why we're not speaking up. And then the other one is, unfortunately, many of our men folks don't want to have the conversation because a lot of them would have to admit that some of them have been involved, may feel guilty as having been encouraged to violate women at a young age, and may feel guilty likely feel guilty about it, or is involved in a lot of these behaviors currently and don't want to give up their habits. I know that sounds horrible. I'm not saying it's exclusive to men, but for the most part, maybe some women now, but people don't want to give up on their own habits and don't want to be checked. It's like, you don't tell me about my dysfunction, and I won't call you out on your dysfunction. And so the cycle of abuse and conning goes on. It's a conflict of interest. Many of the brothers, greetings, sis. And you know what? I had to say, you know what? Big ups to you. Big ups to you. I'm so appreciative I'm gonna be real, I'm appreciative of black women speaking up. I'm so appreciative because we're not speaking up, and many of us have been on the first on the receiving end of this abuse. And I used to wonder, like, coming out of this cult with Joseph Robinson, aka self-proclaimed high priest Kwatamani, and so on. I was wondering, in there were many patterns, and again, I have several videos that I put out for educational purposes, not for entertainment. I was wondering, why is nobody speaking up in here? I was like, as a mother, I'm old enough to know, mature enough to know, I know there's a reason. I would watch this man were complacent in the earlier years. Well, yes, but right now I'm going to draw. Sometimes we can jump so back far into history. I'm going to tell you from recent, current experience, right? Me, not that long ago, maybe it's been a year or something, a year and a half. I've been out of this cult. Different patterns that I saw. Now, many of folks out there in the screen land can look at this stuff, and let me make this very clear to the women that uphold these cult leaders, and I'm going to say especially to the men. I lived in there. I gave money. I supported. I was down with many of the principles. Many of the principles I still live by today because he doesn't own the principles. Just like these leaders don't own black culture. They may be so-called champion, but he don't own, this one person, the creative Kwanzaa. He doesn't own Kwanzaa. He's just drawing from the best of principles that have helped us and put something on it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But anyway, I watched him ask people questions, and these were grown adults, mostly grown adults. Nobody would answer. Oh, definitely. Feel free to go in the about section and reach out, sis. Because there's so much I couldn't even tell you in just a few words. But nobody would answer. Now, in my common sense wisdom, I observed patterns. Because as mothers, we observe patterns. Most people, if they would put their emotions to the side, we could observe the patterns, and regardless of calling ourselves this camp or that religion, if we put that to the side, we could then have access to our common sense to observe the patterns. Why would grown adults? He asked questions, and the few times that there were guests or visitors, who, by the way, were only allowed to come within a certain area when they were visiting, they were escorted in and out off of this man's his land. Why don't they answer the questions? And if you look at this other younger cult, the patterns are very similar, and I continually recommend that people educate themselves on cults, black and white, and narcissism. Because it's rampant today, and this will give us a lot of. It can really stop us in our tracks in terms of our behaviors and a lot of the dysfunction, but it will require us to really be brave enough to look at to question the why we wind up in certain situations. Is intelligent as I could say I am. I have to look at, how did I end up in the cult? Now, first of all, I didn't know it was a cult. I did not know it was a cult. And yes, intelligently, I could say, well, the United States of America is a cult, church is a cult, there's cults everywhere. But I could not make the distinction in the pattern once I became isolated in a place I visited overseas. I got a whole nother frame of reference. And currently, in the climate of so much stuff coming forth, we want to constantly keep focusing on, oh, you were so stupid, this and that. And which the cult leader loves, or the manipulator, the con artist loves, because you all get so confused that you take the focus off of doing an investigation. You take the focus off of accountability. You're so distracted. And these cult leaders are master manipulators of human psychology. My grandpa used to say, you're so smart, you're stupid. What you gonna do with all that book learning? And you know, I used to just wonder why, you know, older folks, they say so much in very few words. And it was very, very common sense. And so now we have access to so much information, but because you can regurgitate information and all of this talk of the knowledge, the knowledge, the knowledge, I humbly have to say to young people, should anyone share this with a young person? This is not, there's a lot of esoteric knowledge and stuff to make you think, but this is not new information. And at the end of the day, if all the knowledge you have cannot translate into you putting yourself in a dangerous situation, having unprotected sex, doing background checks, saving your money, being responsible for your choices, being responsible for the children you make, making more informed decisions, choosing a better partner, then I got to question your knowledge. That is the thing today. We're being so exposed with this knowledge. It makes young people think because you're old enough to have sex and drink and smoke that now you're on the same level of your parents, and because you see the perceived contradictions of your parents, you know, a lot of these folks coming over to Central America think that they're doing something different. It's just like with the hip hop generation. You know, is it no? Now I will call it rap. I came up on hip hop, so this now I will call this the rap generation. You know, with the jeans hanging out. This stuff is not new. Stuff is not new, and you're lured into the illusion that you are doing something new. People, you know, raving about yeah, the knowledge distracts from the manipulation, and you're being played. You're being played. It's not hard. I've said it to keep it simple. It's not hard. It's really not hard for intelligent people to be scammed. We're scammed every day, and part of it is on us because we don't want to be responsible. We don't want to think that hard. We don't want to think that if you really take the time, males and females, to properly vet and qualify the people you want to be in relationships with, it would make most people draw back and keep their genitals to themselves because you haven't done background checks on people, their sexual history, their criminal history, diseases, more than just the AIDS test, their spending habits, just basic stuff in terms of safety around your body and people's criminal records. If people had to, on their character, people refuse to take the time because culturally with the music, you know, everything is sexy and I got a makeup makeover. We're so superficial that we don't want to take the time to properly vet people. So you overlook things in people's character, and keep in mind, you don't know people really until you've lived with people, because as you see when people go online, they put on, and I'm not knocking necessarily makeup if that's what people choose to do, but people are already showing you something when they don't want to be themselves or are comfortable with themselves. You know, everybody's run into something they think that they don't have. In the tropics, and I've shared before, there are benefits to both environments. You can access nature wherever you are, but everybody's constantly looking at people like they have something that they don't. You know, as another sister shared, you know, for example, many black women think that pretty girls have it easier, or light-skinned girls have it easier, or somebody, if they have an education, that makes you easier. All the women can be scammed. Many men that complain about their children's or their babies' mothers, you know, the responsibility is, you know, you chose women that you didn't vet them for, yeah, you didn't vet them for their character. You didn't want them for their character. You wanted to get in there quickly. And as I've said to my son, I would be very wary, and I'm telling you now from wisdom, I would be wary of anyone that lets you have sex with them quickly, because most likely, they'll very likely have a disease, because they're a disease or something else that could be worse, or something with their character, because they're not taking the time to vet you. You know, so I would be more impressed if I was a younger person, or anyone that wants to be in a relationship today, if somebody took the time to vet me and ask me questions and not give me such easy access. You know, narcs hunt with sex as well. Yeah, and narcs can be they can be women, but I can tell you right now, my primary experience in terms of these cult leaders has been with a male, and quite often it's because where a lot of our fathers are missing in action, and we can go into all the different reasons. We already know the reasons. It's not all of our men. It's not all of our men, and at the end of the day, are we going to be responsible because we want to see a different result? So initially, let me just come back to, again, the focus of the video is that the conning and the scamming We're turning a blind eye and we're not holding folks accountable. So I'm going to speak to several people have reached out to me, and one that's very interesting is a male reached out to me and sent me, I'm not going to mention the person's name, but sent me a message saying that I wanted my wife to communicate with you to give some information about, coming to Central America. And several people on some of these lives have asked me, if I think about it, kind of, I would say demanding to a certain degree, but maybe just the rhythm that we move in the States, taking things for granted. What's the rent in Belize? How much it costs to get an apartment? No sensitivity to I came out of a cult, have had family members in there. You know what I'm saying? It's like this thing that you can just throw money around. That's part of what will get most people coming from the States is going to get you got. Whether you come over to Central America or whether you go to Africa or whatever, you're going to get got because if you're looking for something easy with skipping over the process of vetting, if you skip over the process of getting your own house in order, if you skip over the process of saving, if you skip over the process of having return tickets and having a backup fund, if you skip over the process of having at least a respectful working relationship with family members, so should anything go down, even if your folks eat meat or maybe overweight, that you have a phone number that you can call when you're on the other side of the world. Because folks want to skip the process, that's one of the ways that we get got. And especially young people are particularly vulnerable because cult leaders going to lure them, number one, having them look at the contradictions of the perceived contradictions of their parents and making them feel that they know more than they have actually experienced, right? So, the whole thing, sometimes when I hear this thing, the knowledge, what knowledge? I really don't see what these folks are teaching folks about wearing their own hair. Okay, but then telling people stuff that is basic information, but they're things that we haven't wanted to acknowledge, if that makes any sense. We're giving people credit for enlightening us. For example, the cult leader Joseph Robinson said to my sister that she owes him her femininity. Another time he said to me, I should be trying to woo him. Right? I'm a mature grown adult. Another time his queen mother. See, without telling everything, if I don't share some of these subtleties, people won't be able to pick up on the things that I saw in terms of the patterns that didn't add up. Another time, and keep in mind, they control the context. And when you're isolated, there's a lot of stuff that you can maybe sense something is off, or you ignore it because it's all these nuances you can't see in the whole grand picture. So let me make it very clear, people looking on YouTube when they have a few minutes in between their job and their lunch break, there is so much that you cannot see from this little computer screen. But patterns, if you learn to recognize patterns, when people say stuff with enough conviction, you believe them. And folks have been manipulating the Bible and religious oratory and stuff because it works. It's so simple. That's why people keep going back to the same book, because it works. When when you can't answer certain questions about life, you get confused. You know what I'm saying? So folks are just getting you confused to the point where you second guess yourself. One of the constant strategies of these cult leaders is to constantly make you second guess yourself. And just like any other muscle, you can program the brain. I know in fitness we call it muscle memory. But we also know you can change the neural pathways in your brain. And when you are distorted reality, but you can be conditioned and be in that environment isolated so long with gaslighting and crazy making, which by the way are actual techniques of narcissists and cult leaders. You can be in that for so long that your critical thinking stops. You stop fighting because you're constantly manipulated, and people in the cults constantly tell on each other and snitch on each other or played against each other to make the women feel they're better than this woman, or they're not doing as well as you. These are all techniques by manipulating. So everybody's being played. You're out there in YouTube land, you're being played. And I think one of the reasons why it's so interesting to watch some of the cults and the exposures that is so interesting is because we see ourselves reflected. And if we were honest, we're looking at the stuff, it's an opportunity see, because a lot of times you can't see yourself, and we don't see ourselves. Oh, you're welcome. And I will say this, wisdom, it's not bragging rights. It's hard earned lessons. It's butt kicking lessons. It's like, oh, you would never want to think that a woman and children could scam you or participate in certain kind of things. There's certain concepts I couldn't wrap my mind around another woman would do. But based on experience, I could understand when a woman, younger or older or more mature, is so deep in, well, her resources are gone. She's alienated from her children. She's been exposed and she's connected sexually, with these cult leaders. It's like they're in deep. They're in deep. Once you form connections to the people that are in, or the children that are in there, and you're constantly played, say, oh, the children love you. The children love you. You're constantly being played on you psychologically. So the wisdom is hard earned, and I'm saying some things. This is not from some stuff I read in a book. So people can take the information. If it resonates with you, if it stimulates you to think and use your common sense, if it gives you something to look forward to just put on your mental Rolodex as a pattern to look out for, then take that benefit. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. But I'm really sharing, which I wish some women would have shared with me and been forthright and forthcoming, but most of us are too embarrassed to have the conversation. And I also knew many other women had come through that cult. I'm like, where are they? There were even people I saw come and disappear, on their land. And I was like, where are they? But I tell you, some of them might even be in this live stream right now. Slowly, they started to show their faces. Why? Because I spoke up. And I feel I was even told, Sister Kwasa, she's speaking up because she got a lot to say. Yes, I do have a lot to say. People try to take your voice or just make you constantly second guess your own intelligence. And in particular, when I saw some really some things that did not add up, that just really internally felt off. You could be trying to rationalize, but I was like, nah, common sense, that's not right. Just different behavior that was so off. And everybody, particularly the women, would constantly make rationalizations for the behavior. Even when I came across some women eventually that had left this cult, and when I got to speak to them, many of them had not spoken before. They didn't have anybody that they could speak to about these things. They could have thought that they were crazy. There was nothing crazy about them. They didn't have a frame of reference, and there's so many nuances that you just could not put into a few sentences that somebody would not understand, because most people don't understand how our minds are working and how we're manipulated. We may look at it at a superficial level in terms of being manipulated to buy products, but the information and the knowledge is not really usable, because it's not translating into our choices. It's not. And many of us are very idealistic as women. We want the best for our children, and we want the best for our community. I think any parent, male or female, wants the best for their children. But at the same time, that's manipulated with a lot of fear mongering. Oh, look at the war. Look at the people being shot down. Or, but all of that stuff does not trump responsibility. You got to be responsible whether you're in the tropics, in the States, or in the cold. So we're so fear-mongered now that everybody's going to start having sex with 12-year-olds, because we need to increase our numbers. We're going to be so fear-mongered. We all need to come together. And this is one thing I have to express. Constantly, right? Many of us say we got to build, we got to come together. True. But at a simple level, you can't come together with scammers. Actually, I did come together with some scammers, and it's thousands of dollars. And, we gave money for land. The agreements were not clear. I'd recommend, as I've said in some of the other videos, you can't come together with people, and we can't build if we don't have clear agreements and if we don't have healthy boundaries. And I would say it is critical and necessary that we have healthy boundaries even in dealing with each other. Someone expressed that they were very disappointed when they reached out to me online. I said to the person, I said, I don't know you. And I asked them why they came to me, approached me the way that they did. And they, they gave some feedback. And I said, I don't know you from the internet. And trust me, I've extended myself to a community, time, energy, resources, and money, and not small money, um, and to actually to a whole other family. And when I tell you, I got taken to school big time. So now, wisdom and life experience requires that I stop and I vet everyone. And it doesn't feel comfortable to not want to hug everybody. It doesn't feel comfortable because we are hugging and touching people. But it doesn't feel comfortable to say, I'm not feeling it. Let me take the time to get to know you first. It doesn't feel comfortable sometimes to say, what's the contract? Let's run this by some lawyers. Let's find a lawyer we can afford and, ask people all these questions. And most likely doesn't feel comfortable for many women to ask folks, let's go get tested and let's get tested again. And FYI, in this age of technology, so you folks know, thyroid tests, nutrition tests in terms of how much nutrition you have in your system, and all kinds of STDs. You and your partner can actually have that stuff done privately through the mail. You can get the kits on Amazon. So we're not really making use a lot of the technology. I question someone who is offended at me asking them questions. That is a gaping red flag. If you're upset or offended or disappointed because I'm asking you questions and questioning your motives, I can live with that disappointment at this time. I'm okay with that. I could live with that. The person said, well, what if we judged you for having been in a cult? You can judge. I think judging is good. I think judging is good. I'm all for judging. Judging in the context of your common sense. Don't ignore what you see. Make an assessment that's not based on your emotions. Emotions have a value. They have a function, right? Your feelings, but the emotions have been trumping our logic, particularly women. Our emotions have been trumping logic. So we are ignoring huge red flags. A lot of it is out of fear of being alone, fear of being old, and we're all going to end up maturing. Anyway, our fear of maturing. It's okay. It's really okay. It's going to be whatever it's going to be. Perhaps a better place or more productive, let me not say better, uh, more um, a more effective place to put our focus is on being responsible and being prepared, because many of us may not get married. That doesn't mean our life is over, and that's some males and females. Are we going to continue to settle for a lack of morals and character and just plain people that are just have foul behavior and a track record of foul behavior? Distinction. I like to use distinctions because distinctions make a difference. Distinction, a lot of time you think everything is all the same. The distinction is can give you information on what's the difference. So will we continue to overlook the morals and character because we think everybody's all the same and not vet or go through a screening process of people's behavior? Because if somebody has had all these different behaviors and a track record, how can you as a young person or any woman, how can you tell that they've changed? How can you what's your litmus test for they have changed? What's tangible that they're putting forth that will demonstrate to you responsibility, that will demonstrate to you that they're not abusive, right? So people can have a history of past, but what is the demonstration and the litmus test that they have come full circle from their past and that they're responsible? Based on the people not taking care of their children, if you think you got the illest nana, and that somebody and I had someone say this to me, an elder say this to me a long time ago, and this was, and I'm not gonna I can't listen to everything that somebody said just because they're a so-called elder, because there are many elders, as this one is, that are abusive of their position and abuse their position as father and elder. But this person said to me basic common sense. They weren't taking care of their other children, and they said this of their own child, their own offspring. He wasn't a child at that point. He wasn't taking care of other children. What made you think he was going to take care of yours? That was just straight truth, not up for my interpretation of what I think. So if someone has this track record of not taking care of their children, if somebody has a track record of unprotected sex, if somebody has a track record of lack of transparency, if this is a behavior, their words could say anything, but the patterns are really going to tell you a lot. So will we learn our lessons? Will we continue to be primarily entertained by all of this stuff that we see online? Because Right now, as we speak, the older OG cult leader, Joseph Robinson, aka High Priest Kwatamani, aka what is the Earth Solar Messiah? He called himself Soothsayer. People even look up and see what a soothsayer is, soul seer, spiritual healer. Um, he's very savvy, and he watches what's going on with the rest of the cult leaders. He keeps his ear with his assistants because he's legally blind. He keeps his mates at the forefront to do research into. He has several sets of eyes, at least 5+ sets of eyes, studying everybody he comes in contact with. So he's not operating by himself. He has other women and his minions and the young men that he's grooming, that he's trained. They are trained, whether we like it or not. Again, I'm saying this from having been inside and lived in there. So, will we continue to turn a blind eye because we like somebody, because they have locks, because they're very charismatic, they got gift of gab, and woohoo, look what they said. Oh, wow, that was dope what they said. It's so easy for us to be scammed. And are we going to continue to be irresponsible? A lot of us are mature adults, and we're functioning as if we're teenagers, in the sense of we're not demonstrating maturity in our relationships, and we need to vet each other and qualify people before you let them into your head, into your bed, between your legs, before you give them access to your children, access to your bank accounts, and so on. And I can tell you, I'm not by any means, I'm not unintelligent or stupid. I'm quite responsible, but I did not know this context of a cult. So that's why I'm sharing it, so that should someone decide to do their research, that at least that I put something on the radar for you to do your pattern. I would tell many folks, when in doubt, leave it out. Just when it comes to opening your legs to somebody or risking the potential for disease or pregnancy, when in doubt, leave it out. Take your time. It's not the saying that if you do everything quote unquote right, not even right, I'll say responsible, that things still can't turn out the way that you want. But at least if you're responsible and you vet people, you can have a plan and an exit plan should you part, so that you're responsible in terms of economics, children that can be made, making sure that you're safe in terms of your body, and not being exposed to diseases, and everybody's well informed. That's responsibility. And as I've said to my sister, all this, when I came into consciousness, there's simple things. Two simple things that I think, or that I have observed in my humble observation, that would be very helpful to us moving forward, and is respect and responsibility. And responsibility, do I feel safe remaining in the same region the people that victimized me? So this question has come up before. People have said, well, I'll just hold on to that. Do I feel safe? But respect first for yourself. Because if you don't, not speaking up is not showing a respect for yourself, because you want to be respectful to an elder. I'm by no means a disrespectful person. It makes sense to me to respect all people, regardless of your skin tone or your color. Whatever color, I'm not going to go disrespect somebody because of their history or whatever. When I come across human beings, I'm respectful, so I'm just going to respect folks and treat people accordingly. It doesn't mean that my eyes are not open. So respect to your own self first, in terms of not putting yourself in harm's way, not exposing yourself to things you haven't taken the time to do research for, and ease back, not to be so fast or thirsty or desperate or anxious, being so anxious that you make decisions that are fear-based. Because a lot of decisions that you make, some of them, there's no antidote. You can't pull the child back in. You can't pull the disease back in. You won't get your money back. You can maybe perhaps make more money, but a lot of the psychological and emotional damage, you can't pull that stuff back in. So respect for yourself. Respect is speaking up, and speaking up when you see stuff in your community that is going off. It is our responsibility, male and female, to speak up when we know that children are being abused. And we have to look at, at least do an investigation before we want to get all and to do a lynch mob on the person that's alerting everybody to this behavior that's off here. At the very least, we should be doing a thorough investigation, because at some point we may think it's that person and those people over there, but if the viruses, in terms of the mishandling and the abuse and the conning of women and children, go on. It's a matter of time. It spreads throughout our community. Trust. It's been spreading. We're seeing this stuff has been going on for a long time, and unfortunately, and we keep looking and peeling back the layers. You can see everyone is connected, all connected in terms of the mindsets and ideologies that folks come out of. They've had similar teachers. Step back, put your emotions to the side. I invite you to and look at the pattern. So respect and responsibility. Responsibility has actions attached to it. Responsibility has actions attached to it. So whatever my feelings or emotions, what I may be attracted to, and this is wisdom hard earned, my responsibility is to ask you questions. You're offended, that's on you. My responsibility is to do a thorough vetting process. And this is male and female for people that you're letting into your life, around your children, access to your finances, giving access to your time. You don't want to find out after you've invested a lot of time and money and heartbreak that the person is not who they said they were. And if people have a past, and if they're offended about you asking about their past, and if they can't demonstrate corrective action, wisdom would say that more than likely you're going to experience the essence of that person's patterns. You're going to experience a lot of the similar stuff. People need to, and if they're offended, that's on them. So the person asked, somebody asked before, am I not worried? And as I've stated before, I'm not focused on worry. Now, have I thought about it? Yeah, but I could worry in New York. I could worry in Africa. This stuff, there's abuse, there's rape. There's people being cut up and stuff all over the globe, in Central America, in Africa, people being shot down in the States. So I don't focus on the luxury. I don't have the luxury to stay in, I don't know if luxury is the word, but I don't have it to stay in worry, because it's paralyzing, and I have stuff to do. I have a small garden to still nurture. Economics is a reality, and honorable earning income honorably wherever you are on the planet, that doesn't change. Wherever you go, rent is doing the first, or the mortgage, or the land taxes. You know what I'm saying? That's a reality. These cult leaders, junior and senior, know that you'll either get so tough, they want to each other so that they won't speak up. So they count on you not speaking up and comparing notes with each other. You can bet on that. They count on you not having a voice, or you haven't been so confused that you won't speak up. So I don't really have it to focus on worry. And as I've said, are people out there not worried about when people don't speak up? All the stuff that's been coming up. Aren't people worried that, I don't know, has anyone ever thought of what are the effects of us not speaking up in our community? Do we ever think that this affects us? Maybe some of us think we're too grown or adult for this to affect us. That's those people over there. It's like I've said to folks that have been close to me that don't have children. They say, oh, that's why I never had no children. That's why I'm single. And everybody doesn't need to have a child come through their womb. But if we don't invest in protecting children and speaking up, then, maybe we shouldn't be surprised when these children get older and their pants are hanging off their backside and they're saying, screw you adults, because y'all didn't look out for me. You didn't speak up for me. You didn't question this person. When I spoke up, nobody came to check on me. Nobody came to see, no adults came to see why I was in the room with Uncle so-and-so. Nobody checked on me. So at some point, folks are like, screw it. Nobody came to check on me in school. Nobody cared. They were so involved in the adult drama that nobody cared about me. So when these young people get to a certain age and they say, they're showing us they don't care with their pants hanging off their backside, because we're not protecting the children and making them a priority. I'm not saying that we need to be prudes or anything, but just some standards for what we're allowing our children to be exposed to. There's a lot of stuff in terms of so much sexuality that is being projected on children that is not appropriate. Their thought process isn't even there, and there is a lot of stuff. We could say it's coming down the line, but it's already here. And we're so vested in being politically correct. We're very in our emotions, and don't take critique well, so it kind of inhibits us, limits us in terms of getting anywhere in our conversations, because we don't want to be uncomfortable. We can't be respectfully disagree with each other. We don't come to a standard. Well, what will be the consequence when our children are violated? What will be the consequence when somebody cons us out of our money as a community? So if we don't have these conversations and come up with standards, nobody's coming to save us. Nobody's coming to put it into action. I would love to know. I see 11 people on. Does anybody have suggestions? You know, this is what I'm saying. I've learned, I'm observing to put the questions back to folks. Is anybody committed to looking out for our safety? I'm taking the chance, being in Central America. The cult is still here putting this information out. But, you know, should I be silenced? Is anybody checking for me? Are they waiting for me to see on the news? Be seen on the news? Is anybody going to say anything? You know, lots of men I've watched turn a blind eye and make rationalizations on some of these black news networks and sit around and they talk around the issue. And then they, you know, get distracted on their own personal stuff and totally get off the point of protecting women and children, that women and children should not be violated sexually. Children are off limits for sex. Do we set a standard for, we want to promote for consensual sex for when it's that, what can young people, what age and what can they demonstrate that they're mature enough to be engaged in sexually, that they can be responsible for children and responsible for their sexual health? At what point do we set some standards and model some behaviors? You know, that's really on us. So I just wanted to come forward today to have this mature discussion with folks because we are overlooking some stuff and that's our responsibility. I have not observed anyone coming to protect me as a black woman other than rhetoric online. And rhetoric is not helping me. I'm not coming to ask anybody to pay my bills, buy me a plane ticket. While I'm a mother, obviously, you know, I love men, but I don't feel desperate, you know. Well, I need somebody just get conscious to come and save me and have me take the perm out of my hair and help me to stop eating meat. You know, this is basic stuff. I don't need somebody to help me work out at the gym. You know, I've traveled, you know, I love our men, but, you know, it's not for us to accept subpar behavior from each other. You know what I'm saying? Only we can apply the corrective action and be mature. And there was there's someone that's very sharp, very sharp. And I give thanks that sometimes I don't have to like what somebody's saying, but I have the common sense that I can still listen and learn something. I can even learn something from a cult leader in terms of what not to do. But there's a woman, she has a channel, Crystal Healing Vibrations. Big up to her. And when first time I heard her commenting on Nature Boy, you know, I'm just so super sensitive to all of the stuff that's floating. I didn't even want to mention that other guy's name, but in one of her commentaries, I heard her mentioning the Bible, and I'm so turned off to most religions. I didn't want to hear even what she had to say. But also my critical thinking mind is always like, slow down, and something she said, and I listened. I was like, wow, she has quite a sharp commentary. And she not a commentary, she's a critical thinker. Critical thinking is so needed right now, so that we don't keep following this person and following that person, or looking at people superficially, you know, or thinking because somebody eats meat or they have a perm or something like that, that they don't have any value in our community. And just totally discounting discounting folks, because this man was eating raw foods, fruits and vegetables, and had locks, and they wore red, gold, and green. But I saw some really despicable behavior and some real basic behavior, and you folks are not going to be given access to that. I saw some stuff. I didn't have a problem with this man having his multiple mates, but and I'm not one to accuse somebody falsely. If it was so great, I would still be there, you know. And there were many things that were valuable there. There are things that I was already doing on my own. I got another experience, a different experience and perspective here in Central America. But there's no way. I'm always so wanting to endorse my folks and my quote unquote people. Again, this could be a reason that we overlook a lot of stuff, because we want to lift our people up. But lesson, it can't be at the expense of overlooking manipulative and conning behavior. That don't work. You can't build with a con artist, a scammer, someone that does not take care of their children, somebody that misuses young women. You know, one of his youngest mates, her mother didn't know that she was going in there for that. She went in for one purpose, and now that's her mate. You know, so we go, oh, we justify it back in Africa. I mean, come on now, common sense. Common sense. And I watch, you know, she's being manipulated. The mature women in there are being manipulated. Facts. And folks will say whatever they want, I lived in there. And if anybody's commenting other than having bought a book or unless they're being manipulated themselves, we can respectfully disagree. But I was in there. I gave lots of money. I supported many of those principles. I still live by because they make the principles up. People telling you about eating fruits and vegetables and wearing your hair is not new. Pooling your resources is not new. But it's what's left out. It's what these people are not allowing you to see in their personal lives, you know? And you don't may not need to know everything about somebody's but you need to know enough in order to vet somebody. The criminal record, the sexual record, if there's deviancy, and this one particular cult leader, a lot of those people are not around for you to cross-reference. So again, another distinction is most of the young adults now some new ones in there that have babies. I think 3 babies were just born at the same time. He stays off the radar, and he uses basketball to lure young people in, particularly here in Belize. But a lot of these folks are not around for you to cross-reference. You know, I know another mother. I've spoken to several mothers in there. I've spoken to several parents that still have folks in there. So while folks are being entertained, oh, they're so stupid and they're talking over each other. Yo, listen, we came to share some information so that you can be informed, you know, and I'm not here to turn a blind eye. You know, nobody questions where's the investigation. And for the record, we approached elders, quote unquote, older people established and who are possibly peers to this person to ask for an investigation. And nothing was forthcoming. We went to the embassy, went to a lawyer. So I'm here to tell you, we exhausted everything that we could within the black community to hold this man accountable. And there was no protection, no investigation, nothing forthcoming. So I like to exhaust everything so that I can be 100. I like to be very, very sure. And I like to falsely accuse anyone. But I could tell you, there is no corrective action other than the corrective action you take and the responsibility that you take for your life. If you don't speak up, most likely you won't be spoken for. Nothing will be corrected unless you hold people accountable. So, yeah, that's it for this sharing. If anybody has any questions, you can leave them in the comments. Okay, be well.